So we cut back to the gang. Che says that Zhang won't see Aang and is mad that they even brought Aang here. He says Aang is not ready because he hasn't mastered the other elements yet. He hasn't learned how to water and earthbend properly. And apparently Zhang could tell by the way that he walks, which is so funny. Like he's like, no, you were walking wrong. Like it's fine. Aang, of course, being Aang and being stubborn and impatient, goes in
Mhm.
anyways. Zhang tells him to get out and that he's a fool. And he like honestly
Oh, he's
drops
always like
some of
spitting
his.
these wise
Oh yeah, he's
bars.
so he's so knowledgeable. Like he's like, fish in the river won't know the river's destiny. It will flow on, but he can never imagine the ocean. And it's like, oh,
I love the way
got
he
him.
says it too, but he can never imagine the ocean.
Yeah,
And
like
I love the way the voice actor says it. It's great. He delivers it great.
he tells Aang that he has no interest in discipline, which is very crucial if he's going to learn firebending. He says that water is cool and soothing, and earth is steady and stable, but fire is alive, and that it will spread with or without a person. And so he says that Aang is not ready, and that he's like, he just can't. He's not prepared
Mhm.
to master fire. And then we get Roku showing up, and he's like, "Bitch, what did you just
He's like,
say?"
"Did you
Like,
just call me weak, bitch? Uh-uh.
he's
I've
like,
done this years and years.
yeah, he's
I've done
like,
this for 1,000 years."
yeah, he's like, and he's like, oh, my bad, Roku. Like, all right, I'll teach you, I guess. Like, and so that's where we get him saying that he will teach Aang, and he's like, oh, you'll teach me, like, and I love the like contrast between Aang and Roku and their like demeanor
Yeah.
is so funny, because Roku's obviously like super self-serious and like, no, like you're gonna teach me this, and Aang is just like, oh my
Yeah.
god, really? Like you'll teach?
He's a kid. I really love this episode for it because it really emphasizes that Aang is a kid. I think there's a line later in this. No, it's in one of the later episodes that we'll get to, but he's like, I'm just a kid. And I
Mhm.
like that this really emphasizes that and his impatience and his temperament. It's very cute,
Yeah.
but it all works.
So
Yeah.
we get some shots of Sokka fishing and Katara practicing waterbending, and Aang is getting his first lesson, and he's told to stand and concentrate. So he follows Zhang up a hill where he practices breathing, and Aang is incredibly bored about this and is like, "I know how to breathe, like it's fine." And Zhang tells him a story of a past student who only cared about the power of fire and just wants and like on how to destroy his enemies with it and not really like focusing on the discipline that you need in order to control it because he's like without control it destroys everything around it
Mhm.
like it's fire it will spread
I do love
and
this like constant reinforcement of fear of fire. This is like
yeah
really the first we hear about it too. We don't meet really any other characters who are afraid of it, but the only other characters that we see that do firebend are these ruthless kind of characters that have no
yeah
fear and are very powerful. So it's very cool to see somebody who's like, I want to be a gentle person. I want to create life. Like I want to foster life. I
hmm
don't. He's the only interaction he has with fire seems to be like it's destruction. It's evil. It's
yeah
he's like scared of it, which makes it so much worse.
it's the first person we see besides Ira who doesn't really use fire, but like he just uses it for more like
Hmm.
menial stuff. Like he just heats his tea, like
He
and
heats his
like
tea up. Yeah,
like or
he's
like makes
warming
a hot
food.
tub. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't.
he's a hot tub in the forest.
This is the first character that really emphasizes and gets into the like actual nature of firebending and what it is, and like that as he's saying, like fire is innately destructive in its use, like and that if you're not careful with that, like you're just going to destroy everything around you. Like that's what fire
Yeah,
does. And he just constantly reinforces that throughout this episode. And then we also, as we get into the episode, see it visually and like through the actions of the
it is
characters and
very
what ends up
cool.
happening.
Yeah.
Um,
I do
so
like
that's great.
how too he describes that it's the only element that's alive that will
Yeah.
keep moving on and destroying it with its own
Yeah,
mind,
like
quote
after you,
unquote.
yeah, like after you start it, like it will continue to go. Like water bending, if you stop bending water, like the water just flows out or
It'll,
does what,
yeah.
it just stops. Like, and earth bending obviously only moves if you like are trying to move it, and same with air,
Hmm.
like aside from the wind, I guess. But that's like a different. That's not.
That's Mother
And they're
Nature. Yeah.
they're very different from the way that fire innately
Yes.
operates,
Yeah.
and he's very aware of that and trying to get Aang to understand that. And so then we get Zhao making his way down the river to Zhangjiang. He throws a bunch of fire at his followers in the forest. We are like getting hints essentially that Zhao is the pupil that Zhang was talking
Hmm.
about. Um, we get uh, back to Zhang, and he's talking to Aang, and he's telling him to learn restraint, or he will risk destroying yourself and everything around you. Aang apologizes and is like excited to work with fire, and Zhang has Aang practice keeping a leaf from burning up, and he's like, you need to, like do as much as you can to stop the fire from spreading to the edge of this leaf. And Aang is saying that he's ready for more, and Zhang leaves, and then Aang is like, "Oh, I can do more now." Like, and he starts to try to firebend more, and Aang doesn't listen and like starts experimenting with fire and like gets a decent flame going and stuff, and just starts doing more and more. And he burns Katara. Like, he creates this huge like cyclone almost of like fire around him,
Hmm.
and it burns Katara. And so she's crying. I love how like almost not like overacted, but like I love how dramatic this like sequences where like she starts
It
like
really
crying and
is.
like it's so hammed up,
But
honestly.
like,
Like it,
her hands got burned,
I mean,
Alex.
yeah,
Like
like no,
she, that's what she uses to waterbend.
it's just so
Like
funny.
she's,
Like
that would hurt.
it's very emphatic. Like both that
It
and then
is.
Sokka
It's
coming
like the
over
slow
and like
motion. Yeah.
yeah, and then like Sokka immediately starts like yelling at him. Katara runs away. Aang is obviously like super sorry
He flew
and
too
like
close to the sun.
immediately feels regret like um and so we get that, we get Katara putting her hands in the river and they magically heal, which I think this is the first
This is
time
the
we
first time
see
we ever see this. Yes.
healing with
Healing.
waterbending,
Hmm.
which is super cool. Zhang comes up and says that she has healing abilities and that like some of the Water Nation like tribe have these abilities, which is like again
Which
more
is
lore
cool,
stuff.
but I'm like, it's very convenient at this time.
Yeah.
I love the show, but I hate to bash it. But I was like, well, how convenient is that?
um so yeah, she gets her hands healed and he again waxes about how like he essentially hates the fact that he's like linked with this destructive force and he wishes he could like create and heal and do things like that as opposed to being fire.
Yeah, he
um
calls it like a burning curse.
yeah,
And I think that just really
just
shows like I feel like it's one of those things the more afraid of it you are, the more it's going to like
be
overpower
a
you
problem.
and be a
Yeah.
problem. Yeah. Like you attract what you
And
fear kind of thing.
yeah, and so he again says fire brings only destruction and pain, and then fire bombs start getting thrown at them because Zhao is attacking. Zhang makes a crazy firewall
I love
that's
that.
just the dude is so powerful, honestly. Which like I mean, yeah, he's a
Yeah.
firebending master, so like checks out. But like it's
Checks
such a
out.
cool
But
visual.
this is, I think,
Uh,
like the first use of that we see, like that much fire bending at once.
yeah, so like that's super cool. We get him blocking off the boats, and so they have to like get onto the shore and then go to like combat them. Zhao says that his old teacher gave up fighting a long time ago, so we get like confirmation that Zhao
Confirmation. Hmm.
was his pupil. And so then we start to get a like fight between Zhao and Zhang, sort of, because Zhang doesn't really like fight actually. Like he like is like, no, I'm good, and kind of dips out, and then Zhao like tells his soldiers to go find him in the forest because he's like, oh,
Hmm.
it's a trick. He's like gone. Um, Katara runs back to the camp to get them out. Aang is sulking in the hut and he's like, I'm never gonna firebend again. Like I can't do it. And she's like, well, you're gonna have to at some point, bro. Like
Yeah, she's like, it's fine. I'm healed. And he's like,
yeah, and
what? She's like,
he's
I
like,
don't know,
how
magic. We gotta go.
she's like, we'll explain it later. Like it's fine, but right now we need, it's the most stereotypical, like, I'll explain later, but right at this moment we have to leave. Like, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Which I
well, I
guess,
mean,
like,
yeah,
what else are you gonna do? Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, we get that. We get Zhao fighting recklessly because like Aang, of course,
Mm.
whenever she's like, "Oh, they're attacking Zhang," Aang's like, "Oh, we gotta go help," and so he goes back, and we get like a 1v1 with Aang and Zhao, which is again highlighting Aang not using attack. He is just
Hmm.
straight up evasive and defensive this whole time, but
Hmm.
also realizes some of the lessons that Zhang was teaching him, and that the destructive nature of fire, and that like his pupil, which we now know was Zhao, was just interested in like the destruction and like using it like that. And so Aang just starts jumping over all of his ships, getting Zhao to burn his own ships in the process, which is
I
like
do love it.
so smart. And like he's also just, I love how much shit he talks right here. Also, it's so funny.
It's so
He
good.
just
He
like
even taunts him
like
with Zuko a little bit. He's like,
yeah,
I
he's
think Zuko's even better than you. And that
Yeah, and
really
like
gets him angry.
it's so funny. He's like, "Oh man, I don't know why I thought that you would be better than Zuko, but I guess not." Like,
I'm just saying.
and it's like, it's so good.
Aang, you little shit.
So he's
He's
just
so
evading
funny.
him and getting him to ruin his ships. And then at the end of it, Aang is like, "Well, you've lost this battle." And he's like, "You haven't even thrown a single punch." And he's like, "Yeah, but you have, you idiot." Like,
Period.
and then
Period.
Zhao realizes that all of his ships are destroyed, and Aang leaves, and he's like, "Have fun on the walk home," and hops onto Appa, and they fly
Such a
away,
dick move. I love it.
which is great. We then get Aang having a burn wound, and Katara's like, "Oh, I can heal you," and she like does that. And then yeah, it's weird that because Sokka's like, "When have you been able to do that?" And she's like,
Yeah,
"Well, I guess I always knew how." And it's like, I
bruh.
mean, sure. And
Sure.
I love his joke. He's like where he like starts naming all the times where he's like,
What
"Oh, that
about
would have
all
been
the times
nice."
I got hurt? Like, I do like
Yeah,
that. I feel like the writers were like, we have to point that out, that we kind
yeah.
of did just put that in there.
Which like it's I understand the power, like she always had that power technically, she just didn't know to do it. But
Because,
like it's not
I
like
mean, she had
she
no waterbenders growing up. She was the only one.
but the thing is it's not like she learned, it's not like someone was like, "Hey, if you try to do this, you can do it." She just like put her hands in the water and they healed. Like what
Yeah.
there's no inciting anything that made it different from like any other time when she would have
But,
possibly
like,
been injured and
I wonder
like
if it's
tried
because,
to,
like, her hands were in that moment, like, freshly wounded. And
I
maybe
mean
her
like
body, it was like a kind of thing, I don't know, like your body knows to heal itself or something, or
yeah, it's just
I
it's
don't
such a
know.
funny thing. Like you were
It's,
saying, it is a
yeah,
very just like it's a convenient thing where they're like, "Oh, hey,
very
we can."
convenient.
I wonder when in the and like they might talk about it in the art book some, but like where in the development process if they like had the idea
Mm.
for healing with
If they had
waterbending
this
to like
later or earlier.
yeah,
That's
or
what
like
I'm
if
also
from the
thinking
beginning they
about.
were like, "Yeah, we can use like it'd be cool if some of the waterbenders could heal too, like to really give that counterpoint to the destructive nature of fire and stuff." Or if that was like
Because, like,
a
oh, like, we need this later on. It'd be very helpful if we had somebody who could heal wounds. Hey, Aspect listener. Enjoying the show?
then be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out more episodes and clips on our playlist here.
Thanks so much for watching, and
Lameo Hotman.